Today on Biblical Higher Ed Talk, I sit down with me. This is the first episode that I've done without a guest. And as we wrap up season 7, I thought it would be a great idea just to share some observations from my seat as president of ABHE. Hello, Philip Dearborn here, president of ABHE. And we're going to try something new for this episode. This is the last episode of our season number 7 of Biblical Higher Ed Talk. And typically I have a guest on the show. In fact, I've never done a show without a guest. So we've done 116 different episodes. That means 116 guests over the last couple of years. And so I'm going to try something new for this last one. And I am the guest. I have avoided doing this because I really don't think I'm that interesting of a person that I can do an entire episode and not have somebody else talk. But we're going to give it a shot and see how this goes. This could be the very last time that we do anything like this. But so, like I said, we're wrapping up season number 7. I've really enjoyed doing Biblical Higher Ed Talk, just the opportunity that I've had to interact with so many different people from different perspectives and different backgrounds, authors, leaders, presidents at our institutions, any number of different leaders that are within our space or close by our space. And just hearing their stories and hearing what they're passionate about and any advice that they want to give to us as we lead in this sector of higher education. So what I kind of want to do with this episode is just share some of my observations, just generally speaking, within biblical higher education, within the sector of higher education. Kind of things that are concerning to me, trends perhaps that I see, and then also want to talk about some threats that are coming our way. Some of them we have talked about on this show, actually, and brought in people who are aware of what are some of those threats. But we face one pretty significant threat. I would call it an existential threat right now. And so I kind of want to walk through that and perhaps encourage you to reach out to your elected official in Washington, D.C., and perhaps help them see how this particular threat impacts our sector. But we'll get to that towards the end of this particular episode. So, what encourages me in our movement? What do I see around us? One of the things I really love about my job, and people have asked me, what is it that you love about being the president of ABHE? No question. The thing I love the most is getting on our campuses, our member institution campuses. We have 171 right now throughout all North America, so 171 institutions that are enrolling probably north of 90,000 students at this point. And so my goal in my presidency, I've been president now for 6 years, my goal is to get on to as many campuses as possible. And so one of the things I really love about my job is getting on the campuses of our member institutions, meeting the leaders and meeting the students. We're in this business for a number of different reasons, but some of those top reasons by far involve our students. And I love it seeing how all of our different institutions approach teaching our students through the various programs that we have and some of the unique strategies that they have. And so for me to get actually on the ground and see that happening and then hearing the stories of the students, and we are just such a diverse group of institutions. When I think about obviously within the conservative Christian context, we still have a level of diversity of institution. And we have adult learners, we have traditional undergraduate students, we have denominational schools, we have non-denominational schools. We have institutions that are directly connected to the church, some that are loosely connected to the church. Some who are, we have HBCUs in our membership. We have, I think of Alaska Christian College, who have a unique ministry to students there in Alaska who are coming from very unique contexts. We have work colleges, institutions that are really focused in on helping students learn who they are, how God has created them, what gifts, talents, and skills they have, and then directly matching them in a work context. So it's a rich diversity. But when I think about what unifies us, it's our commitment to Christ and our commitment to the authority of the Word of God. And when I can get on the campus and see that happen, it's absolutely a wonderful thing. So I would say I might be biased with this, but I think in all of higher education, if you're looking at institutions who are most mission focused, I think our sector brings a lot to the table. Many of our institutions have a very narrow scope with their mission, and they're locked in on that. I think, when we think about our viability as a sector, a lot of very focused mission institutions. I remember some years back, and you still see this in the literature where people say, who in this current world of challenges, fiscal challenges in higher education, who are the most vulnerable? And going back several years, it was small institutions, low endowment, and single mission or very narrow mission institutions. Those are the most vulnerable in these times. And I think there's probably some truth to that, but it's been interesting to see kind of the shift that has happened in some of the language. In fact, to go from vulnerable to now in some of the literature, I hear people talk about boutique institutions, that those are the ones who perhaps have the ability to pivot in these unique times. And so I like to think of our institutions as boutique institutions. And it's kind of drawn from the business sector where, everyone was concerned when Walmart came in or when Amazon comes in or Target, the big box stores, that's going to replace all of the small ma and pa shops on Main Street. And that didn't happen because what the small ma and pa shops brought were unique and niche services and products. And so I think within the scope, if the illustration works, I think in the scope of higher education, we have our Walmart providers, we have our Target providers, we have our Amazon providers, but within that doesn't mean that there's not space for us. And I think we are boutique institutions who are in this environment, single purpose in mission of training students to proclaim Christ, regardless of occupational context that they're in, whether that's direct ministry, indirect ministry, parachurch organizations, or even within a secular context. God has placed our students there to share the good news of Jesus Christ. So that's probably the top thing that really encourages me in this time, are to see institutions that are mission driven, who are training the next generation of students in their walk with the Lord. Second thing that I think is an encouragement to me, and it's related to that first one, is the spiritual formation that's happening on our campuses. Again, I don't think any other sector consistently have institutions who, I bet you every single one of our institutions has a budget line item for spiritual formation, whether it's chapel related or discipleship group related or whatever, small group related, even curriculum focused in this area. And so all of our institutions share that as a common bond. And spiritual formation is one of those things it's tough. It's a hard thing to measure. It tends to be a topic that we say, okay, spiritual formation, well, here's our program for that. And while, yes, there are structures and programs for it, those are means to an end, and that's to see our students grow closer to Christ and to be conformed to his image. And our institutions are tackling that, and I think doing a great job with it. One of the partners that we've partnered with, who's also a senior fellow, is Todd Hall, and he has the Spirit Pulse survey. And I know a number of our institutions use that. I've been so encouraged looking at those results where students are growing spiritually. And I really think spiritual formation is one of those things that if you don't pay attention to it, tyranny of the urgent will take over and you won't have opportunity. There are all kinds of competing interests to spiritual formation. Our faculty want more courses, more content into the curriculum, more learning objectives. Maybe some of us have specialized accreditors and we're trying to shoehorn in more courses and, well, what can go? And I think sometimes we compromise a little bit on the spiritual formation side of things. But it's so critical, so important, which is why I love at ABHE when we put together our strategic plan, our very first goal in our strategic plan is to shepherd a spiritual movement. And I'll never forget the day that we added that. Dave Metters was speaking about it with my executive leadership team, and it kind of, the lights went on for all of us that if we don't state it, we'll replace it with something else. And so we've been very, very intentional. We have days of prayer. We, as part of our last capital or our current capital campaign, distributed Oswald Chambers' My Utmost for His Highest, trying to do intentional things to help our institutions in their spiritual formation. And I hope to share some news later on this year related to how we can even go further with supporting that. So that's another thing that encourages me. A third thing that encourages me in what I'm seeing, ABHE is growing in the midst of the craziness that is all of higher education right now. And it feels like a day doesn't go by, or a week, perhaps is better stated, that you don't hear another institutional closure. But as an organization, I think I was in a meeting just this week and heard that ABHE right now, we have 26 new applicants for accreditation. And 26, and some of those are startup institutions. And I think of others that are in the pipeline that are startup institutions. I was privileged to attend a groundbreaking for Austin Christian University. And here's a brand new startup university committed to the authority of the Word of God, committed to training and infusing 30 credits of Bible and theology as they're training business leaders there in the Austin area. I think of Orlando Christian University. I think of Highlands College. These are all startup institutions that are absolutely flourishing right now. And so when I came in as president, I think we were this is like 6 years ago, high 140s, 150, somewhere in that neighborhood. And ABHE right now, we are at 171 institutions. And that's with some attrition. Some schools within ABHE have closed or decided to move away from us. But even in the midst of all of that, we're seeing growth. And I'd say, people will often ask about, what are our strategies to grow membership, and would we ever broaden our membership to include more institutions? And here my response is this: our sweet spot, where we feel like we can help the most, are with institutions who are committed to orthodoxy and committed to the authority of the Word of God. And those things we're not going to compromise on. Our institutions, every year sign a statement of faith and put on paper their commitment to a unified set of beliefs that drive biblical higher education. And the day we start to compromise on that, I think, is the day that we start to shift into a direction that is troubling. And I think, and the way I say it, those are non-negotiables, our tenets of faith. We're not going to negotiate on those. Those are foundational. And as long as an institution can commit to those, we're in your corner. We're going to help you succeed however we possibly can as an institution. Some institutions feel like they need to move out of that context, and I'm not going to provide a commentary as to whether they are wrong or right in it. If before God they feel like that's a choice that they've made, then so be it. But what I'm saying is we won't change in order to keep institutions who perhaps have broadened in perspective. And that's our sweet spot. And so that is what really encourages me is organizational growth and seeing institutions that are coming to us. And I love it when they say it. I've heard it from multiple institutions. You are our people. When they come to annual meetings, when they come to conferences, they really resonate with that. So I think that's three things. Fourth thing that encourages me is just the innovation that I'm seeing within our sector. Competency-based education is growing, and people are really paying attention to that. Others are looking around and seeing AI and how can we leverage AI in the context of the classroom and in the context of our institutions. Innovation of consideration of going from 4-year degrees to 3-year degrees, and I just love the thinking, and it kind of connects with what I said earlier about boutique institutions. One of the values or benefits or things that we can leverage as boutique institutions is we are small and nimble, and we can shift and change, where a large institution, a Walmart, a Target, an Amazon, it's harder for them to pivot just because of all of the complexities that they have. But boutique institutions, I think we have that over other institutions where we can pivot. So when it comes to innovation, we can meet specific demands along the way. I think I've lost count. I think that's 4. A fifth one is our Canadian friends. When I first became president, it was during that time that we don't speak of, known as COVID. And one of the things that I told Dave is as soon as we can do it, I want to travel to Canada and meet with every single one of our Canadian presidents. And COVID prevented that, but we were finally able to do that. And as I reflect over the last 6 years, I would say that was truly a highlight of my presidency of ABHE. Getting to meet, I think at the time it was 19. I think we're up to 21 institutions right now in Canada, but 19 meetings with presidents, leadership teams, meeting students, and hearing from them the unique context that they're in and how within definitely more struggles socially than what we face, and more pressures, economic pressures than what we face here in the United States. Our Canadian institutions have figured out how to navigate through that. And so there was a great learning opportunity for me, so much so that even in our capital campaign, we're raising money to have what we refer to as Canadian C-suite gatherings. And we had our second one just this past October, where 100 leaders, it was about 95 leaders, gathered together in Canada. And we were able to provide leadership training, times of worship, times of fellowship from a Canadian context. And the illustration, one of the presidents in Canada took me to a Canadian football game while we were visiting. It's the illustration I used to kind of describe how things are different between the United States and Canada. On the surface, it feels very similar, right? It's football. They're playing football in Canada. They're playing NFL football here in the United States. But yet it's nuanced and different. So in Canada, don't quote me on this. I'll probably get an email or two on this, but I think that the field is 110 yards, right? It's not 100 yards. I believe it's 10, 15 yards wider. Instead of 4 downs, there are 3 downs. I don't know if the ball is there. I think the ball is the same, but when you can kick a field goal and what does it count for? And they're all different. I think there are 10 players on the field instead of 11 players. So the illustration, higher education on the surface, it looks the same in Canada and the United States. But when you start to dig a little bit deeper, there are these nuanced differences that actually make the game look and feel totally different. But I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing in Canada, and just the opportunities I've had to build some relationships along the way have been terrific. I don't know what number I'm on now. So the last one, how about that? Thing that's encouraging me. And this has been something that I've had a vision for ever since I started as president of ABHE, and we launched it. This February, we launched ABHE's Leadership Academy. And the thing that I've been impressed with since coming on as the president, I love the leadership development that we do. Dave Metters, Carol Dibble have all done a great job of putting together our face-to-face events. And we're going to continue to do those. Critical for us to have those engagements and opportunities to build relationships. Having said that, and I feel like we've done some things in the past with faculty. I think we have a missed opportunity to provide professional development training for faculty. We have it's almost 7,000 faculty members at all of our institutions. And really, ABHE does nothing for them. And there's no way we're going to be able to meet professional development needs through face-to-face conferences for 7,000 people. It's just simply not going to happen. So we got thinking, how can we provide that? And it's through digital learning. So we have our first, I think it's up to 26 courses that are active. And thanks to the generosity of so many with our capital campaign, we are launched. And Eric Brandt, who we've hired, doing a phenomenal job building out the Leadership Academy and the platform. And this is free. If you are a member institution or at a member institution of ABHE, you have free access to the Leadership Academy. And these are micro courses, and we're doing them for C-suite leaders. And Eric is right now literally working on building out the faculty courses. And we're looking to start 100 courses, and we will continue to build them even after we develop those 100 courses. So those are just some encouraging things that I'm seeing from my seat as president of ABHE. I want to switch over to some things. What discourages me, and it's not geared towards, obviously, I wouldn't do this towards any one institution, but it's things I see just generally in Christian higher education and really in higher education altogether. First one is around the issue of silos. I don't know who in our industry or the foundations of why we are so silo driven. I think it's a result of how we do our training within the academy, but we really like our silos and we defend our silos. And I think that leads to pettiness. I think there's good intention when we hire individuals on our campuses, faculty members, even staff members or leaders who are real passionate about their area and their subject matter, but so passionate that they can't see beyond it. And anything that doesn't support what they think is important and valuable, they fight for it in inappropriate ways and sometimes can get petty. And I think the urgency that we're in, we can't afford to be petty. We've got to figure this thing out. And in the midst of realizing the diversity of thought and opinion on our campuses and scholarship and people who are really about theology and theory and then those who are more about the practical side of things, or those whose discipline are in the general education or the humanities, or and those who are those are all great. They contribute to the overall experience for our students and the curriculum. But we got to get rid of that pettiness. We got to get rid of that. This is mine and holding on to it. We got to figure out ways. In fact, I say it's the strangest, it's the strangest thing in higher education when we have faculty who go off, they get their PhD, they're trained to, defend a very, very tight gradient of knowledge, and they are just experts in that area. Then we hire them on our campuses and we expect them to pull back and see the big picture. And that's a hard discipline. It could be because they are so focused in. They've been taught all their life and they've written a dissertation and studied a particular topic, and then come in and now there's competing ideas and thoughts. And sometimes I think there's a tendency to hold on to that. I think that's what creates those silos and leads to some of that pettiness. Second thing that discourages me is when I see institutions, drift in mission. And mission drift, and a lot has been written about this. I am not going to pretend that I'm an expert in this area, but all I know is I know it when I see it. A lot of times it's unintentional. Institutions make decisions a lot of times because they're trying to enhance enrollment, And so they're adding programs that perhaps are a little bit broader than their scope, or adding athletics onto their campus, or thinking that athletics is suddenly going to change the dynamic. And I'm all for college athletics. Don't get me wrong, but looking at different ways that with the end goal of growing enrollment as opposed to mission fulfillment. So I think we make a lot of good decisions, or we think we make good decisions. And yet in that process, that decision is an iterative step towards mission drift. And I always encourage presidents and leadership teams when I meet with them, when you're making some of those decisions that on the surface may appear to be very good decisions and right decisions to make, ask the hard question before you actually make the decision. If we do this, how could it contribute to mission drift? I think if you're asking that question, you're kind of checking to make sure that down the road you won't add another layer and another layer and another layer, and ultimately you are drifting as an organization. It's tough. The environment, the reality that we're in is difficult, but our institutions have got to stay focused in and being mission driven and avoiding that mission drift. And the third thing that I would say is institutions tend to not want to take risks, or when an opportunity is presented, they want to mitigate all of the risk out of that opportunity. And in the process, they miss out on actually what God had for them in that process. And I think of a book, a life-changing book for me, Opportunity Leadership, Roger Parrott's book. I think he does a great job of working through this. He talks about don't need a strategic plan. I think you do need a strategic plan. And I'm not totally sure that he's saying you don't need one, but I think sometimes we get so locked in on who we are that we miss God opportunities that he places in front of us. And there's this risk aversion that if we do this, this and this could happen. And it kind of plays in not contradiction, but intention to mission drift, right? Because now if an opportunity comes up, could that take us off mission? And I think sometimes there's such a fear that it will, that we're not even able to consider it. I also think, and this is a general statement, and I've been guilty of this, where we really focus and fixate almost on theologizing our methodology, as opposed to saying, you know what, there are all kinds of means by which we can achieve this particular end. And I think there's a place to add theology to method, but not to the point that it prevents you from considering a totally different way of delivery, or entering into a totally different educational philosophy, like competency-based education. But so that's a third thing that discourages me. So if you know me, you know I'm an eternal optimist, so I don't want to talk anymore about discouragements. However, the last thing I want to talk about could lend itself to discouragement. And I think it's an important piece that y'all need to be aware of. Actually, when this episode airs, I will be in Washington, D.C. with 21 ABHE presidents on Capitol Hill, having meetings with representatives and senators about the do no harm provision in the One Big Beautiful Bill, which for the sake of simplicity, I'll just call OB3. This provision, I think generally speaking I understand why this provision is here. And if you're not aware of it, do a Google search. I'll just give a brief summary of it. But basically what it's doing is saying that if a undergraduate bachelor degree student, and then of course a master's degree student, isn't earning what, for the bachelor's degree, a high school graduate makes, or at the master's level, what a bachelor's degree makes, then the Department of Education will deem that program a failing program, and over time will make it ineligible for loans and potentially even Pell Grant, though that's kind of up for debate at this point. But this is law. This is starting July 1st. And when you look at the programs that this impacts, I think, it went after the for-profit sector, and I think a number of the programs that this bill targets are in the for-profit sector. but it disproportionately impacts biblical studies programs. And if you look at the statistics, you definitely see that. For undergraduate degrees, the Department of Education has run the initial statistics and believe that like 54% of programs will fail. And at the master's level, I think the number's 88 or 89% of the programs fail. Well, we see why. Our students are not at our institutions with the end goal of making as much money as they can. They are there responding to a call that God has placed on their life to serve Him. We've never been about salary. We've never been about making money as an end. Does it happen along the way? Sure, it does, but that's never been our focus. And so because of this disproportionate impact on our programs and our institutions, we are trying every effort that we can. And I'd encourage you, if you are part of ABHE, or even outside of us in Christian higher education, this impacts all of higher education, really. And to have conversations, because I really believe this was an unintentional impact on this bill. I think there were other things that it was going after, but in the process, kind of a guilty by association thing happened, and it disproportionately impacts our sector. So we're going to be working on that over the next couple of weeks and hoping that we have a solution for it. And like I said, this is law. This is happening. These metrics are in place. This is not proposed. This is what is happening. And so and I would consider this to be a pretty significant existential threat for all of ABHE. Feel free to reach out to me if you want more information about that. And I can certainly fill you in. And like I said, this week, actually today, when this episode airs, we'll be in Washington, D.C., having some of those meetings to help our elected officials see the unintended impact of this particular bill. So there you go. This is the end of our season. And this summer, we're going to have some great shows. We're not on as frequently, but I encourage you to tune in. This is the end of season 7, and this fall we'll launch into season 8. I just want to say thank you for being a faithful listener. I never would have imagined that we have as many folks tuning in and downloading our episodes as what we're doing. And my hope for you is that through Biblical Higher Ed Talk, that you're encouraged, you're informed, but really, and I'm a big proponent of this, we get better as leaders one degree, one tick at a time. And my hope and prayer is that Biblical Higher Ed Talk provides some of those opportunities, aha moments. Leadership isn't about the big moments. It's about these little incremental choices that we make. And the cumulative effect of those, we grow in our leadership. So thank you for being part of our movement. Thank you for being part of Biblical Higher Ed Talk. And I'd encourage you, if you are part of ABHE, lean in. The value proposition for membership with ABHE, oftentimes we think value proposition is what can I get out of it? And while there are things that we believe that we provide, things that you can get out of membership with ABHE, and it's an odd way to say it, but part of that value proposition is what you can give. And I've seen it many times where people have learned in leadership contexts, leadership development contexts, come to annual meetings. And they give back. They come in and they give back what they've learned, what they have experienced. And so many of our institutions are way ahead of a lot of our startups. And it's really neat to see when those institutions step into the gap, help some of our institutions who are just starting out with it, help them not make the mistakes some of the larger institutions have made through the years, or older institutions have made through the years. So keep leaning in, keep being part of who we are at ABHE. I'm optimistic. I truly am. We serve a big God. None of what I talked about today takes God by surprise. We serve Him. This is His movement. We are building His kingdom. We are sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. We're shaping the next generation to step into our culture and be witnesses for Christ. So I'm encouraged. And yet, in the midst of that, there's work that we've got to do. And so thank you. Thank you for your time. And I trust you all have a fantastic summer this summer. And I look forward to some episodes, like I said, spattered throughout the summer, and then we'll start up with season 8 this fall. So until next time, stay kingdom focused.
The Biblical Higher Ed Talk podcast is proud to be a part of the Higher Ed Marketer Podcast Network. Discover even more conversations, resources, and tools to help you grow your institution at thehigheredmarketer.com. Your go-to community for all things higher ed marketing and leadership.